There are rare moments as a creator where an idea of yours may grow into something bigger than you ever could have imagined or were ever truly prepared for. A hobby or a project that you were doing just for fun can explode in popularity and very rapidly evolve into a full-time job that you just don't have the experience to handle. Where a passion that you spent your free time enjoying becomes a product that people have a rabid demand for, your life can change forever. Where you were once just a designer or artist, you are now donning the hats of a community manager, customer service representative, server admin, and a punching bag for the volatile community that your creation spawned. For some, this can be the dream finally come true, but for other, more reclusive developers, it can quite quickly turn into a nightmare. This is what happened to the creators of a game called Cubeworld. Today, we're going to explore the story of this game and the traumatic ways it impacted the lives of its creators, which ultimately led to its downfall. This is the Death of Cubeworld. What is Cubeworld? If you've managed to never hear about this game before, let me give you a quick rundown. Cubeworld is an action RPG that takes place in a massive world made entirely of blocks. No, not that one. This voxel-based game emphasises exploration throughout its procedurally generated, fantasy-inspired lands, where you could fight monsters for XP, interact with friendly villagers, customise your character, advance in your chosen skill tree, and gradually upgrade your stats and equipment as you traverse deeper and deeper into this brightly coloured, cutesy-looking realm. Inspired by the likes of World of Warcraft and The Legend of Zelda, Cubeworld's development began in June of 2011 by one man, Wolfram von Funk, also known as Wollay. His wife, Sarah, known as Pixie, would join Wollay as a voxel artist for their game. The dynamic duo were the only two developers of this passion project, and together they released an alpha version of the game on July 2nd of 2013. It wouldn't be until September 30th of 2019 that the full game would be completed and officially available to the public. We'll get into just why the development time was so lengthy and why it took over 8 years to fully be released. But before we do that, let's talk about the overwhelming response to Cubeworld's announcement. Before Wollay had even released a playable version of the game, he had already cultivated a large following through the teasers alone. At the time of its development, games like Minecraft were hugely popular, and the survival crafting genre had a lot of fans. A lot of fans. Through the posting of update blogs and teasers on Twitter regarding the development of Cubeworld, Wollay had inadvertently amassed a giant fanbase before there was even a game to play, and it didn't take long before this community demanded a way to play said game, growing more and more fervent as the days passed without it being released. The hype that had built up around Cubeworld was very sudden and extreme in its intensity, becoming one of the most highly anticipated and sought after games around that time, and no one felt this wave of anticipation more than Wollay. The pressure was on. In order to appease the masses of fans eagerly awaiting the release of any kind of playable build of the game, Wollay released an alpha version in July of 2013, but almost as soon as it was finally up and released, Wollay and his game would be hit by something that would go on to affect its future development, and Wollay himself for quite some time after. A DDoS attack. You've probably heard of someone getting DDoS'd before, but if you don't know exactly what that means, it's essentially when a server or online service is intentionally flooded with traffic in order to consume the server's capacity and knock the service offline. It's a malicious act, but one that you're likely prepared for if you're a developer or releasing a product to a large audience. But for Wollay, it was more than just an annoyance. It became a long-standing source of anxiety for him and may have exasperated his perfectionist behaviour, causing updates to Cubeworld to slow considerably. Wollay did an interview with Kotaku shortly after the attack on July 8th, and said, "Initially, we assumed the fault was on our side, like our download/updating system could be broken, so we closed the sale and improved our systems. But it turned out that all of these problems were just the result of DOS attacks. It seems that someone is trying to systematically damage us and our business. The attacks usually occur during evenings/nights as soon as we open our store or user registrations. The attackers obviously want to prevent us from selling our game." After this, Wollay went silent. Initially, fans weren't sure what was happening. Maybe he was working on safeguarding his servers from future attacks, or perhaps he was just busy creating more content for the game. Either way, it was safe to assume he was simply back in the developer kitchen, cooking up a storm. Just like you could with today's sponsor, HelloFresh. As a full-time self-employed YouTuber and a ex-chef, I know all too well how tempting it can be to order quick and easy fast food, and the not so easy realization of the price at the end of the week. I genuinely enjoy cooking, but the hassle of planning, prepping, and shopping can eat up a lot of my time. And this is where HelloFresh swoops in to save the day. Fast, affordable, and easy meals delivered straight to your door. I've now been using HelloFresh for close to a year, and I don't see myself going back. It gives me the time-saving benefits of fast food with the nutritional perks of homemade meals. And best of all, it's extremely affordable. No more staring blankly at the fridge wondering what to make for dinner. Give HelloFresh a try and choose from over 45 chef-crafted recipes each week, including calorie smart and protein smart options. Everything arrives pre-portioned, fresh and ready to cook. Less hassle and more nice. And the best part? When you sign up for HelloFresh today, you'll receive free dessert for life. That's right, enjoy a free dessert item in every box, making your meals even sweeter, as long as your subscription is active. So don't wait, simplify your meals while enjoying chef-designed dinners and a sweet treat to finish. Click the link in the description or use my code to get 16 free meals plus free dessert for life while your subscription is active. There were a couple of tweets here and there throughout the months, but nothing like the community interaction he had before this attack. It wouldn't be until October 21st, around 3 months of abstaining from interacting with his fanbase, that he would update everyone on the status of the game, and after being contacted by Kotaku on his radio silence. This was a relief to fans, as it showed Wollay hadn't simply run off with their money, or, well, died. Kotaku asked if the DDOS attack had impacted how much he would share about the development of the game. To which Wollay replied, maybe. He said, it was a very discouraging experience. It was clear Wollay had suffered from this experience more than one might have expected. He began to avoid social media and would not share exactly what he was going through for another 6 years. Though communication was now more sparse with the public, Wollay was still updating his followers on Twitter every now and again, ensuring them that he was still making progress on the game and hadn't abandoned it, or them. But near the end of June of 2014, a few months after announcing a large questing update to the game, Wollay would completely vanish. This time, there weren't any sporadic posts or updates or anything. Wollay was simply gone. A year passed and there was still no sign of Wollay anywhere to be found. At this point, rumours and speculation littered the internet. Had Wollay actually died for real this time? Did he decide he was done with the game and abandoned it? Was he living a quiet life somewhere with the money he had made from the fans? With there not being a single blip of communication from Wollay, any theory was as good as the next. And drama surrounding Cubeworld ran wild. Many had given up hope that they would ever see a return on their investment in the game that they had spent years now supporting. The last real update it had received was in July of 2013. In the midst of his disappearance, the game was pulled from the website and was no longer able to be purchased. That was it. It seemed like Cubeworld had well and truly died. But after nearly 2 years without any updates to Cubeworld, and almost a year and a half of radio silence, Wollay appeared. After Kotaku again reached out to him in 2015, Wollay actually responded. He stated that he and his wife were still working on the questing system. He added further, since the last published video, I redesigned the quest system several times, but I didn't want to tease fans with new features before I'm 100% happy with them. Maybe I'm a bit of a perfectionist here, but I just don't want to develop Cubeworld in the wrong direction. Even Kotaku was like, come on bro, really, at this point, and asked if it would be too much for him to at least periodically mention that he was still around, working on the game. Wollay responded, while I'm working on something complicated, I prefer to focus fully on development until I'm done and can show the results. Unfortunately, it's taking longer this time. I'm not posting, hey, we're still here, because that's beyond all question. Cubeworld is my passion project and I will work on it until it's finished. But it wasn't beyond all question, at least not to the fans he had kept in the dark. Nobody really knew Wollay. Nobody was informed about the goings-on surrounding the game. Nobody was allowed to help with or work on the project except him and his wife. It wasn't really unreasonable for people to ask if he had given up, taken their money and split, or actually went and died. The fans only knew what they were allowed to know, and that wasn't very much. The fears that Cubeworld was nothing more than vaporware were completely founded, considering Wollay's behaviour. But why was Cubeworld no longer able to be purchased and pulled from the website? Wollay claimed that a change to the EU tax laws made selling the game himself a much more complicated process. He told Kotaku, the new law makes selling games on your own far more complicated, especially for a two-person team like us, and requires me to re-implement the shop on our website, he said. Since I'm also doing the web programming all on my own, I decided to focus on developing the game before taking care of the shop, so the fans get their updates as soon as possible. A simple solution here would have been to hire help to make development run a bit more smoothly. Wollay was good at the game design portion of development, but left much to be desired when it came to the business side of things and also being the face of the game. Although it was understandable that he was protective of his passion project, had he allowed a few people he trusted to help him, maybe some of the drama surrounding this game could have been avoided. Even just having a PR person to send tweets out on his behalf would have been good, as Wollay once again vanished off the face of the earth. After a solid year of regularly posting on Twitter the updates coming to the game, he disappeared with no warning yet again. His last message would be in July of 2017, and he would not be heard from again until January 26th of 2019. Another year and a half of no updates to the alpha, no playtesting, no checking in with the community, nothing. If he wanted his audience to be patient and leave him to work on the game without all the drama or speculation, he really didn't go about making that happen very well, did he? When he finally did make a post in January, it was simply an announcement that new screenshots of Cubeworld were coming. No updates on anything else, no explanation of his absence. And right after these screenshot posts, he vanished again. Because we don't learn lessons here. That's for the PR team that he didn't hire to figure out. 6 months later, and with almost half a decade of nothing to show for in regards of tangible progress on Cubeworld, Wollay posted a few more screenshots. Fans were understandably disheartened and downright furious at his behaviour, and the feeling that they were being intentionally strung along with tantalising images of a game they couldn't play. Cubeworld's initial hype had died down significantly. Fans had no faith in Wollay or the future of the game, and most either didn't truly expect the game to ever be released or cared whether it was or not anymore. Then, on September 7th of 2019, Wollay opened up to his followers on his blog. He would explain his behaviour and the struggles he went through over the past several years in this one singular post. Verbatim, it read, "Dear Cubeworld community, I think this is the right place for this. This is where it all started, where my little passion project came to life and became something much bigger. Here is my explanation why everything took so long, why there were no updates, and so on. When I released Cubeworld back in 2013 on our homepage, I was enthusiastic to finally share my game with you. It was a dream come true for me. I wanted to be a game developer ever since I was a kid. As some of you might remember, we got DDOS'd as soon as we opened up the shop. It might sound silly, but this event traumatized me and kind of broke something inside me. I never told anyone about it, and I don't want to go into the details, but I'm dealing with anxiety and depression ever since. Social media didn't improve it, as you might imagine. I'm still not sure if it's a good idea to tell the world about it, but I want to give the fans an explanation. There were several points in the past year where I considered releasing an update, but every time I was too afraid it wasn't good enough. I'm also a bit of a perfectionist, and it made me rework everything from scratch several times. The version I'm planning to release is basically Cubeworld 2.0. There are still many things I'd like to add in the future, but I think the version is already fun. I hope some of you will enjoy the upcoming release. I'm currently working on the new homepage and still want to add some lore-related things to the game before the release. The attack on Wollay's game, compounded by the negativity Wollay would receive in response to his reclusion from social media, ended up deeply affecting him. Some people are able to let criticism and attacks roll off their backs, no problem. Many are not. Heck, even many YouTubers won't read the comments because of how badly the negativity can affect them, even if the majority of the comments are supportive. Sometimes that's just the way the brain works. It's hard to blame Wollay for his reaction to all of this, but people spent their money on his game after all. They expect a product they did not receive. It's hard to blame them for their reactions either. Regardless, Wollay also made a surprise announcement alongside his decision to open up to the fans. Cubeworld was going to be released on Steam sometime in September or October of that year. All of those who had supported him by buying the alpha version would be getting Steam keys to access the full game. Fans went nuts. The hype was once again full throttle, just like old times, and on September 30th, the game was released, finally. After over half a decade of waiting, and on and off silence from Wollay, countless theories and rumours and controversies surrounding the game's development, supposed updates and changes that fans were eager to try out, and never knowing for sure if Cubeworld was ever going to be fully realised. It was out. Wait, what? But this is the Death of Cubeworld. Say so right there in the title. If it's finally been released to a huge, hyped up fanbase, how on earth can it be called anything but alive? I suppose in a sense, it was alive, but as you will see here shortly, it indeed was the Death of Cubeworld, as fans knew it. So what happened? Well, the cube world that the fans were expecting and the cube world that they got were two completely different things. Features that they had been expecting all along since the beginning of the game had been changed or removed. Things like experience points from slaying monsters were suddenly replaced with artifacts that you would find around the world to promote exploration. The skill tree idea that allowed you to progress your character? Completely scrapped and no longer existed. You also weren't able to customize your weapons as was originally promised. You couldn't build houses as was teased, and so on. But the biggest thing to change was the progression system of the game. It was completely reworked, and you no longer kept any semblance of your progression as you moved on into different areas of the game. Your progression completely reset when entering a new region, meaning items were region locked and unusable, and the system now in place didn't have much of anything to do with progression at all. Stuff you slowly gathered over time in your explorations in one place became worthless as you explored further. There was no sense of delving deeper and becoming stronger anymore. You just reset every time you went somewhere new. A lot of other content promised in the alpha was also scrapped or missing, but ultimately it was clear that the game the fans had been waiting for over half a decade for no longer existed. They got a knockoff version of it instead, and I think that's where most of the problem lies. Most of the negativity came from the fans being given a game that they didn't recognize or pay for. They signed up for what they saw in the alpha and then received none of that. It was just jarring for them, to say the least. Maybe had the fans been able to take part in the game's development, even just playtest and familiarize themselves with the gradual changing content, it wouldn't have been as upsetting to experience on release. But this just wasn't how Wollay operated. As was the case in my Death of RuneScape video, a lot of the issues arose from so many changes happening all at once without any player input and little to no playtesting being done before release. Had there been better communication, the ability for players to interact with the idea instead of being force-fed it and simply just delivering what was promised, or at least explaining why it would be different, maybe the players wouldn't have felt so burned by the surprise results they were given, and maybe Wollay wouldn't have experienced the extreme backlash that he did. And after all of this backlash and intense negativity, you know what happened next. Wollay disappeared. Again. This time he took his blog with him, signifying to the world that he may very well be gone for good this time, leaving the game in a state unrecognizable by the fervent players that had been looking forward to it for so very long. Cubeworld Omega? Then, on May 25th of 2023, a decade after the release of Cubeworld's alpha, and nearly 4 years after the fiasco that was the game's official release, Wollay came back with a brand new blog, detailing his newest project, Cubeworld Omega. The blog is short, but in it, Wollay says he is working on a new version of Cubeworld in the spirit of the alpha build that the fans had loved. Oh boy, here we go again. Had Wollay heard the cries of his supporters? Had he finally come to terms with what the people wanted and decided to just give them that? Had he seen the errors of his ways and was now planning on making it up to those he had left disappointed so long ago? Well, that remains to be seen. He has yet to address any of the legitimate concerns of his followers, and the way things are going, we may never get any kind of resolution to the questions that have been left unanswered for years now. As of writing this in spring of 2024, not much is known about Cubeworld Omega. The updates surrounding this version of the game have been sparse, with his last update being in October of 2023. On his blog, Wollay claimed to be creating the game in a new engine, adding procedural character models and updating the GUI, with one small line at the bottom of the blog stating he's bringing back experience, leveling, and skill trees for this new version. This has been exciting news for those who still follow the game, but many are approaching this latest comeback with extreme caution. On the Cubeworld subreddit, there have been a variety of posts lambasting this latest comeback and have been deeply thorough in highlighting just why Wollay shouldn't be trusted. Most of it has to do with failing to deliver on previous promises, but there are certain key points beyond that are worth highlighting. More specifically, the drama surrounding the DDoS attack Wollay says he experienced, and the poor moderation that occurred during the official Cubeworld release that resulted in fans being silenced en masse. Wait, what drama? Wollay was DDoS'd and it seemed to have hurt him deeply. What drama is there surrounding that little tidbit of information he shared with us? Surprisingly enough, a lot. Remember when we talked about how Wollay thought his webpage was under attack due to the obscene amount of traffic he was receiving upon releasing the alpha build? Well, it may have been just that. Traffic. Not malicious, not an attack, just fans eager to get the game and overloading his server. Something he may have accidentally, or intentionally, identified as a DDoS attack. If he had accidentally thought it to be a DDoS attack, that would be one thing. But some internet sleuths have come to the conclusion that it wasn't an accident, and that he had faked it intentionally. But why do they think that? Those with a bit of server savvy pointed out how Wollay stated that disabling user registrations on his page resolved the attack, but if it was a real attack, it would have done little, if anything, to impede them. These users claim that because of this, he knew he wasn't being attacked, but changed his story for sympathy and more widespread coverage of the game. This is a whole essay with images that I'll post in the description that dissects Wollay's narrative surrounding the DDoS attack, but the gist is as follows. The one piece of evidence Wollay gave people for the supposed DDoS attack was a slight uptick in his server's traffic, around 93 megabytes a second of data. This essay goes on to share the average DDoS attack rate. The supposed attack on Wollay was drastically smaller than the average DDoS attacks around the same time period. The user also points out that these supposed attacks took place at peak traffic hours for Wollay's site. Basically, if this was a DDoS attack, it was a comparatively small one that took little to no effort to knock Wollay's server offline. The user of the essay, who seems to have a flair for the melodramatic, states, "This is like him getting one tiny splinter entirely due to his own carelessness, lack of planning, lack of testing, and not wanting to spend money on a decent plank that wouldn't give him splinters, and contacting as many journalists as he could to claim that he was maliciously covered in 4,150 splinters in a targeted attack, and he wants people to support him even more." The post continues talking about discrepancies of how such little data that hosted the download could knock down the server versus how much more data was being used to host the actual game just fine, as well as Wollay admitting he had inefficiently programmed aspects of his updating system and server. But overall, it doesn't necessarily objectively confirm whether or not Wollay was indeed lying about what had happened, whether he was trying to avoid accountability, genuinely through what could have just been naturally high traffic, was indeed an attack, or was truly the victim of a DDoS attack is still something that isn't absolutely certain. This write-up is based on the limited information Wollay shared with Twitter users, so I'm taking it as with most of this drama with a grain of salt. And there's clearly plenty of salt to go around when it comes to this topic. This could have just been a lack of preparation and experience on Wollay's part, and a simple mistake. Okay, well, about the moderation issues during release. Oh boy. We haven't even scratched the surface of this clusterfuck. Once the beta was finally live, many players were understandably upset with the game they had received, and such, expressed their opinions where they could. But they would quickly find that their posts were randomly deleted by Wollay's mod team. Discussions even slightly critical of the game were removed, and some people were even banned. This obviously only inflamed the drama surrounding Cubeworld and its release. Enter Pixie. At the height of this drama, the voxel artist spoke up in regards to the controversy surrounding the moderation team and the supposed silencing of the players. As it turned out, she was actually one of the head moderators at the time. She made a post on Steam explaining her side of the story. In it, she says, "Sorry for the inconvenience. Hello, I'm sorry that I deleted some of your threads. I'm not used to being a moderator, but I just wanted to replace threads with name calling and harassment. I hope you take my apologies and I will try to do it better next time. Pixie." According to her and her team were simply trying to keep the insults and unconstructive criticism at a minimum. But in the replies, there is a myriad of evidence that this totally wasn't the case. One comment lists almost 24 examples of threads being locked and people being banned despite no evidence of harassment taking place. It also mentions that the Discord and Reddit mods are just as trigger happy as the ones on Steam. But it doesn't end there. Post after post after post that isn't complaining about the state of Cubeworld is complaining about the reaction of moderators to the posts. It was clear people were being targeted for even unreasonable critiques, such as when one user suggested that they hire a community manager and their post getting tagged as inappropriate on Steam. Hey, I also suggested that not too long ago. My apologies for being improper. I am a controversial man. Others would get into arguments on Reddit with Discord moderators who claim that they don't censor criticism. The moderators would be lambasted with multiple users calling them out on their BS. Things got so intense that it came as no surprise when Wollay vanished again, and for as long as he did. But now that he's returned, will things be any different, or will controversy and negativity drive him away once more? If Wollay does end up going through with his new version, it should be everything the fans have been longing for over a decade now. The alpha version of Cubeworld would finally be brought to fruition, like we've all been dreaming of, with all of the features and content that made fans fall in love with it in the first place. But That's a big if. Once again, it would seem Wollay's consistency with keeping fans informed has gone from starting out semi-consistent to disappearing for months at a time. Beyond that, he is no longer replying to Twitter posts and his comments are disabled on YouTube videos. The negativity is clearly something he is prepared to avoid this time around for the sake of his mental health, and good on him for that. But he still is not keeping fans up to date despite these safeguards. Here's hoping he actually lets a few trusted people into the project this time around to take some of the workload off his shoulders. As has been mentioned many times before, a community manager or PR person would have been a fantastic start, at the very least. Oops, there I go again suggesting that. Better tag me as inappropriate too, because I just can't help being so damn controversial. But if he doesn't take anyone's advice, and we see a repeat of history, well, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this style of content from me. And I'll see you once again, should we end up having to make a video on the Death of Cubeworld. Omega. Yeah, as well.